the Yajna and the yard party. The Wednesday market had just wrapped, which meant Gainesville's strange and sacred order could return to its natural rhythm. Kombucha highs, hula hoop prophecies, and over-fermented cider drinking under mismatched Christmas lights. Everybody who was anybody was there. Hare Krishnas chanting like lawnmower engines, barefoot kids dancing in the dirt, college girls in thrifted saris burning incense that smelled like armpit and sandalwood. There was a DJ set off an old milk crate stack, a live didgeridoo battle, and somewhere, God knows where, a truck with a propane-powered concrete pizza oven welded into the back by a man who looked like he used to make meth in it. It was, by all accounts, a holy event. Happy didn't usually stay long. He sold his sunflower sprouts, traded weed for vegan banana bread, and dipped. But that day was his birthday. Somehow, he didn't ask how, people found out. Probably Blair. Or maybe Ravi, that pseudo-psychic punk who could never shut up about Happy's aura density. He got dragged by the elbow, smiling but silently calculating all available exits, into a big old Victorian house off Main Street. One of those half-ruined, high-ceiling Gainesville relics where you could hear ghosts whisper through the ductwork, and every room had a tapestry covering some sort of damage. It had been gutted and claimed by a loose confederation of hippies, dropouts, and feral honors students. Smelled like gas station incense, black mold, and strawberry-flavored vape. "Welcome to the Temple of Transmutation," someone shouted. Happy was handed a hard cider in a mason jar and deposited on a milk crate throne in the corner. The bong made its rounds. A potluck table sagged under the weight of tempeh kebabs, quinoa burgers, and one unlabeled crockpot that was probably lentils, but looked like swamp regret. Some kid with half a beard and a full sunburn leaned over and whispered reverently, "Hey, bro, do you know it's your solar return?" Happy took a long hit and smiled. "Yeah, been returning solar since before this planet cooled, partner." No one knew what he meant. That was fine. That's when she sat down. The girl. She had feathers braided into her hair and a daughter named Sati Sativa, which, according to her, was Sanskrit for loyal to the medicine plant. Happy blinked slowly, then chuckled, low and long. "Sati?" he said, swirling the cider in his cup. "As in Daksha's daughter?" She nodded. "Yeah, I saw it on a yogi's Instagram. Real deep name, you know?" Happy took another sip and leaned back like a man settling into a tale he'd told 1,000 times in 1,000 forms. "I knew her once. Sati. Not your version, the one. She was a fire of a girl. Wild heart. Married Shiva, you know? Which pissed her daddy off something fierce. Someone nearby tried to correct him, something about archetypes and symbolic mythic structures. Happy ignored it. Daksha, Sati's daddy, was a grade-A galactic dickbag. Throws this big cosmic party, invites every light being and dimensional architect worth their wingspan. But not Shiva. You know why? He didn't wait for an answer. 'Cause Shiva don't wear pants. 'Cause he lives in the woods and talks to snakes. 'Cause he don't sit nice and comb his third eye at fancy table dinners. Daksha was all about propriety, image, you know? Little HOA-ass celestial bureaucrat. Now the room was paying attention. Someone lit sage. A girl in a hemp bralette whispered, Anyway, Happy continued, Sati shows up to the party uninvited, 'cause she's got guts, and says, "Hey, Daddy, why you being a cosmic Karen?" And Daksha, this smug little meat suit of ego, just runs his mouth, slaps her down verbally in front of everybody, real patriarchal gaslighty horseshit. He paused dramatically. took a drink. So she self-immolated. Right there, poof, flames, rage fire, burned herself right out of the world. And when Shiva found out, he whistled low. Oh boy. He looked around, eyes a little too clear now. You ain't seen destruction till you've seen love gone wrong at the top tier. He danced the death dance, opened up time, turned gods into ghosts, cut off Daksha's smug little goat-ass head. A stunned silence followed. Anyway, happy birthday to me. That's when Sarrah walked in. At first, she was just another blur in the chaos, a silhouette of wine glass and shadow against tapestry walls, hair spilling like a storm down her back. Happy didn't notice her the way men notice women. He noticed her the way an exile notices the gates of home. Time stubbed its toe. The air turned thick. She stood half in shadow, half in candle glow. Her hair was longer now, her cheekbone cut with a faint scar. She wasn't smiling, just watching. Eyes steady, glass of wine held like a weapon she'd been practicing with. His grin faltered, his breath caught, not in fear but in something older, like recognition grinding up through bone. And she felt it too. He could see it. The slight flare of her nostrils, the way her shoulders tightened before she forced them loose again. Her lips parted as if to say something, then closed on silence. 1,000 battles, 1,000 betrayals, pressed between them like air too heavy to breathe. Happy's chest ached. Not now, not here. But when her gaze locked with his, the years fell away. She was still the same ruin he'd chosen, the same fire that had burned whole dimensions down around them. And she looked at him like she still carried the ashes in her throat. She raised her glass in a slow, deliberate toast. Her eyes said, "You remember." His blood answered, "I never forgot." The room throbbed with music, incense, laughter, but it all blurred out. He only saw her, the line of her jaw, the scar, the dangerous calm in her mouth like she was holding back a storm. Her lips moved, just one word. Too quiet to hear, but it slammed into him like prophecy. He almost said her name. Almost. But names had consequences, and they both knew it. Instead, his throat caught on something half-formed, curse, prayer, or surrender. She saw it. She always saw too much. The crowd didn't notice, but some instinct rippled through them, like the subconscious of the room knew two tectonic plates had just collided. A girl dropped her drink. Someone laughed too loud. A drum skipped a beat. Happy's body remembered before his mind did. The way she tilted her head, the slight curve of her wrist, the scent of jasmine and smoke cutting through patchouli and cheap cider. His heart lurched with a cruel, tender ache. She held his gaze 1 second too long. It was a promise, or a threat, or both. And for the first time in centuries, Happy felt something worse than fear. He felt hope. Years ago, though years is a soft lie when it comes to divine timelines, there had been another party. Not a yard party with lentils and kombucha, but a yajna. A sacred fire ritual stretched across plains, soaked in mantras and cosmic intent. The kind of ritual that shapes destinies and unmakes empires. The kind of party where gods judge each other and mortals pray they're not noticed. He remembered the smell of rosewood and clarified butter, the chanting, the sharp sting of cosmic incense burning holes through the fabric of time. He remembered Sati, not this crunchy, dreadlocked kombucha mom, the real Sati, the one whose eyes held galaxies, the one who stood before a circle of chanting deities, wrapped in silks and grief. And he remembered the moment she turned her back on a pantheon that never saw her as whole, turned her back on him too, because he hadn't stopped her, couldn't, wouldn't. And when the fire took her, when the sacred flames danced over skin and name and form, he felt something inside him rip wide open. It wasn't just grief, it was rage, the kind that doesn't burn clean. When the smoke cleared, the universe shuddered. Shiva danced, the heavens cracked, and in the ash of all that unraveling, Satyadharma got sloppy. He made a choice, the kind gods aren't allowed to make. It involved fire, slaughter, betrayal, lust, and Sarrah. She wasn't a demon in the classic sense. No horns, no tail, no pitchfork, just raw power, barely wrapped in skin. A being of appetite and charm and ancient hunger. The kind of woman who didn't knock when she entered a man's life, just lit a match and smiled. They had danced back then, across battlegrounds and silken bedsheets, across moral lines and planetary collapse. And then, one night, in some half-forgotten dream realm, he killed someone he shouldn't have, a radiant being, a teacher of souls, a carpenter, a lamb, a rival. They fought under a blood-red sky. And when it was over, the prophecy broke. The second coming derailed like a train off a mythic track. Oops. And so the sentence was passed. Exile. Incarnation. Time served on earth, with memories like scars and powers in storage. He snapped back to the present with a start. Sarrah was gone. Just the faint smell of jasmine and old flames in the air. He reached for the cider and found it empty. Someone nearby was droning about Mercury retrograde. Someone else played a hang drum badly. Happy stood up slowly, his joints creaking like old floorboards. He didn't know why she was back, but he knew this. Whatever came next, he wasn't ready. And that made it fun. Indra, tequila, and the end of the world. It was over an hour drive through dark, swampy roads from Gainesville to Citra, and it was already pushing 3 a.m. The Wednesday night market had long since burned itself out, leaving behind a psychic debris field of hemp ash, kombucha burps, and questionable vegan curry. Nobody wanted Happy, the sunflower sprout man, to make that drive home alone. Not tonight, not after the incident. At first it was charming. He'd told the little girl with the gnome hat that her name, Sati Sativa, was sacred, beautiful, and potentially karmically dangerous. Then he asked her mom if she was into Vedic sacrifice and war chants. Then he drank half a bottle of tequila. Then came the Shiva story. "You don't get it," he had slurred, pointing at nobody in particular, standing on someone's repurposed piano bench like an old Southern preacher possessed by the ghost of Joseph Campbell. Daksha was a power-tripping, self-satisfied bureaucrat with delusions of moral superiority. Sati knew it. I knew it. Shiva definitely knew it. A few people clapped. A few quietly tried to text their rides. He didn't explode the guy because he was mad. He did it because some things just need to be danced to death. Ever try to meditate while someone's insulting your wife in public? That's when you stop being a yogi and start being a storm. The party had started to shift uneasily. People weren't sure whether this was performance art, a manic episode, or a really elaborate ayahuasca flashback. Then Happy started going off about 2012. "I mean, seriously," he said, downing another glass of tequila. "All that hype. The Mayans were like, get ready for the new cycle, and instead we got Vine, fidget spinners, and late-stage capitalism. We zigged when we were supposed to zag, man. Reality jumped the goddamn track." People laughed nervously. Then he hit them with the clincher. "And don't even get me started on Mandela effects. Darth Vader did say, 'Luke, I am your father.' I remember it. You remember it. We're not crazy. The world is. Ever since 2012, we've been living in a cheap knockoff of the real timeline. Then he started crying. A real, soul-level, unraveling kind of cry. Not sloppy, not self-pitying, just broken in a way that felt too old for the body it came out of. Someone handed him a jug of water. Someone else took the tequila. And just before he blacked out in the spare room, halfway into a beanbag chair, wrapped in a moth-eaten quilt with cats on it, he muttered, "If only he hadn't been such a dick about being the truth and the life and all that shit. I'm an Indra man to my core. He can keep his salvation for all the good it does. Give me a God who ain't afraid to fight and is all I can say." And then, with one last sigh, he whispered, "Happy birthday to me," and collapsed sideways into the beanbag like a beached Viking god. A few minutes later, Sarrah stood in the hallway, barefoot, wearing someone else's tie-dye t-shirt and holding a wine glass that was mostly cigarette butts. She watched him sleep. Something about the way he curled up made him look younger, sadder, like a war horse having a dream about grass. She set the glass down. The hallway was empty. Everyone had gone back to the jam circle or the tarot corner or bed. One of the hippie girls gave her a wink and mouthed, "Go for it." Sarrah didn't say anything. She just stepped into the room, soft as breath, and lay down beside him. Sunlight poured through the stained glass Jesus on a skateboard window, warm and honey-thick. It touched the dust in the air like a miracle nobody had prayed for. Happy groaned. His head throbbed like a cracked war drum, his mouth dry with cedar and regret. He reached for water, came up with a rubber bong, and muttered something between a curse and a prayer. Then he saw her, Sarrah, curled beside him in tangled sheets, her body draped in the effortless chaos of sleep. One leg bare, hair spilled across the pillow like black fire. Her lips parted slightly, serene in a way she had no right to be after centuries of ruin. Happy didn't move, couldn't. He just breathed, slowly, as if the wrong exhale would shatter her and send her back into memory where she belonged. After everything, after exile, after betrayals and broken pantheons, she was still the only truth that hadn't bent under his weight, the only one he hadn't been able to kill or leave or forget. That terrified him, and he loved her for it. His hand twitched against the sheet, almost reaching for her. Almost. But he stopped, flexing his fingers into fists instead. He hated how much he wanted to touch her, hated how his chest felt, lighter and heavier at once, just watching her sleep. She stirred, rolled toward him, eyes still closed, a faint smile curling her mouth. Her body leaned into his heat like it had never learned not to. "You snore like a dying ox," she whispered. He smirked, throat dry. "You sleep like a succubus on sabbatical." One eye opened. Mischief glowed in it like banked fire. "You always say the sweetest things." For a moment, the room dissolved. It was just her, him, the ache of wanting something forbidden. He almost said it then, I remember. "I surrender." You were right. But the words snagged in his throat like barbs. Saying them aloud might end the world again. And this time, he wasn't sure he'd want to stop it. Instead, he just looked at her. Really looked. Every line of her face, the new scar near her collarbone, the quiet knowing in her gaze. She had seen every version of him. God, exile, killer, lover, and still lay there with her head on his pillow. Her hand brushed his cheek, light as moth wings, warm as a memory he had tried to bury. The touch burned, but it burned clean. Their eyes locked, his chest clenched. He didn't breathe. "You always were an Indra man," she murmured, her voice velvet and ancient, laced with battlefield smoke and temple fire. Her lips quirked, daring him to deny it. Something cracked in him. He sat up, sheets tangling around his legs, his pulse hammering like thunder against stone. She stretched out in the bed, cat-like, smile unfurling slow and devastating. Not coy, not innocent. The smile of a woman who had burned worlds with him and would do it again without hesitation. "Relax," she said, pulling the quilt over her shoulder. "We only broke one dimension this time." He didn't know if she meant the dream they'd fallen into, the past they'd dragged back into the room, or what had happened on that mattress between starlight and silence. Maybe all of it. His hand found hers beneath the quilt. He didn't plan it. He just needed the anchor. She didn't pull away. She laced her fingers with his like they'd been doing it every morning for lifetimes. For one breathless moment, the war paused. The exile, the blood, the rage, all of it went quiet. It was just them. Two ruined gods in a mortal bed, wrapped in light and shadow, pretending, just for a heartbeat, that they had a right to this. The devil you know. Happy sat up. His head pounded like a Vedic drum circle, and the room spun faintly with the rhythm of bad decisions. It took him a moment to get his bearings. Cat print quilt, stained glass Jesus, bong shaped like a dragon's skull. Gainesville. He looked down. Sarrah was there, curled up in his bed, as calm and radiant as a serpent sunbathing on an altar, bold as she ever was, even the first time he met her, barely clothed and holding a blade, silhouetted by firelight as a demon city crumbled around them. Blood in her eyes, sweat on her collarbone, that silken raiment clinging to her like smoke. She'd tried to kill him. He could have kissed her. She was just the kind of deranged he was. Or maybe just what he felt he deserved. It was always hard to tell the difference. In a universe as bleak and half-broken as this one, the one guiding light Satyadharma ever truly followed was Indra. Say what you want, call him a peacocked warlord, a cosmic libertine, the OG thunderjock. But to Satya, he was loyalty incarnate, the only being who bent over backwards for him, trusted him, got him. Hell, Indra even let him carry the royal umbrella on parade once. That was like handing over the crown jewels and the O cable. And when Satya fell, really fell, chose chaos and fire and hot demon tail over order and dharma, and every last warning, Indra didn't smite him. He just let it happen. Because when your best warrior chooses ruin, all you can do is wait for him to crawl back on his own. Satya never did. He took his guilt and wore it like armor, turned his self-hatred into swagger, fought and drank and burned until even Shiva stopped returning his astral calls. Indra never said a word, not once, but Satya could feel it in the wind sometimes when the thunder rolled, a grief between father and son, a love that hurt too much to look at. Sarrah stirred beside him, stretching like a cat in a sunbeam. She gave him a lazy grin. "Sleep okay?" she asked, knowing damn well he hadn't. He didn't answer, just stared at her, like a man seeing a ghost, like a god spotting the crack in his own armor. She sat up, brushing her tangled hair from her eyes. "Still brooding after all these years, Satyadharma?" "Don't say that name here," he muttered, voice dry as crushed gravel. "Not in this dimension." "Oh, please. Half the people at this party think you're a swamp wizard. The other half think you're a libertarian cult leader. No one here's gonna piece it together." He looked at her. Really looked. Still beautiful, still deadly, still radiating that scent of danger wrapped in jasmine oil and bad ideas. She was the ruin he'd chosen, the one wound he'd never tried to heal. "You were supposed to be gone," he said softly. "I was," she said. "Then I got bored." She leaned in, close enough for him to smell clove smoke on her breath. "You're not the only one on parole, sweetheart." He should have thrown her out. He should have summoned a mantra to bind her, lock her back in the lair of hell where she belonged. He should have prayed, or ran, or drank until he forgot again. Instead, he just chuckled, a dark, tired sound. "God's help me," he said, rubbing his eyes. "I missed this." The hangover of 1,000 lifetimes. The smell hit him before he opened his eyes. Black tea, cinnamon, something smoky and sweet. Then came the whisper of incense. Or maybe someone had just tried to smudge the vibe out of this place with a stick of whatever they thought was holy. He cracked one eye open. Sarrah was back. Not in the bed this time. She stood across the room like an oracle from a chaos dimension, holding a chipped plate. On it, a steaming mug that smelled suspiciously like a chai-hot toddy, and a blunt thick enough to knock a lesser man back to the bardo. She looked almost domestic, if you ignored the glint in her eyes that suggested she'd once kissed a priest just to watch him sin. "You looked like hell," she said, stepping forward. "So I brought breakfast." Happy blinked. The mug, the smoke, her. It was so absurdly kind that it felt like a trick. "You drug it?" "I drugged me," she said, handing him the plate. "You're just lucky enough to benefit." He took the mug, sipped, and let out a low, involuntary groan. Spiced heat bloomed across his tongue and sank into his bones. The warmth of her offering settled deep in his chest. His whole body exhaled. A genuine smile, a real one with teeth and crinkles, broke across his face. First time in... well, he didn't measure things in years. Not anymore. She sat beside him, her head resting against his bare shoulder like it belonged there, like it always had. The contact was casual, effortless, but beneath it, deep down in the marrow, it felt like the moment after a battle, when you realize the one you fought beside is still breathing. He leaned into her just slightly. She leaned back. Outside, the sun was making its slow Florida climb. Insects buzzed. Somewhere down the street, someone was either tuning a guitar or slowly losing their mind. "I missed this," he murmured without meaning to. She didn't reply, just reached down, took a sip from his mug, and exhaled like it was sacrament. She whispered curses into his ear like sweet nothings. Gods, the girls in this house, all of them smell like patchouli and bad decisions. "They think you're still asleep," he muttered. "They think I'm one of them. I wear a scarf and drink out of a mason jar, so I must be spiritually aligned with their $6 bottle aura cleanser." Happy chuckled into his drink. "You're evil." "I'm practical," she said, voice low, brushing her knee against his under the quilt. She pulled the blunt from the plate, lit it with a snap of her fingers, and took a slow drag. Eyes closing, lips parting, smoke curling around her in a lazy halo. Then she passed it to him without looking, like muscle memory from 1,000 other mornings they never got to have. He took it, grateful and doomed. Their fingers touched. It felt like the world paused for breath. There was a long silence. Not awkward, just full, brimming. He looked at her, really looked, the curve of her mouth, the way she always seemed a little out of sync with the moment, but perfectly in rhythm with him. "This feels dangerous," he said. "It always does," she replied, not looking at him. "But it also feels..." "Right?" she offered. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His hand found hers beneath the blanket, and for a long, sacred heartbeat, They just sat there. Two ruined gods in a mortal house, wrapped in old wounds and morning light, pretending, for one quiet moment, that the war was over. In the living room, the house crew was already in full post-market decompression mode. Some shirtless guy with a crystal mullet was trying to tune a broken sitar. Someone else was playing Animal Collective off a solar-powered speaker next to a dying ficus. The blonde girl from last night was doing yoga poses that suspiciously resembled twerking, while another sat cross-legged, whispering to a bowl of millet like it might answer. When Happy and Sarrah walked in, casual, close, weirdly coordinated, the whole room shifted like they'd just walked out of a different dimension, which, in a way, they had. Some shirtless guy with a crystal mullet dropped his sitar. A girl whispering affirmations into a bowl of millet stopped mid-chant. Even the ficus stood up a little straighter. Someone near the speaker whispered, "Whoa." Soulmates like they'd just watched lightning walk into the room and ask for a second chance. Happy and Sarrah both laughed at the exact same time. Too loud, too real, too synced. It wasn't cute. It was history catching fire again. "Sure," Sarrah said, wiping her eye, voice dry as bone dust. "If by soulmates you mean eternally toxic celestial battle couple." "We once ended a minor dimension in a fight about laundry," Happy added, not smiling this time. Crystal Mullet nodded solemnly. "Yeah, man. Love is war." The others laughed nervously, but no one moved. The energy in the room had shifted, like someone had played a chord too perfect, too ancient, and now the house remembered it had been sacred once. Sarah's hand brushed Happy's as they passed through the crowd, not deliberately, just enough to jolt every nerve ending in both of them awake. He glanced down. She didn't look back, but he felt the echo of her. Every lifetime they'd collided, every war they'd waged under stars that didn't exist anymore. She still carried the scent of jasmine and smoke. Still moved like she was walking through. Still moved like she was walking through the ruins of gods she'd helped topple. They sat together on the sunken couch by the fireplace, a threadbare quilt between them. No words for a while. Just the pulse of music and the slow realization that neither of them was going to leave first. "Still can't believe you're here," he muttered eventually. "Still can't believe you thought I'd stay gone," she replied. Happy looked over at her. Really looked. And for a moment, the whole room blurred out. They weren't in Gainesville, not in this dimension. They were in the ashes of a city made of light and vengeance, standing in the wreckage of a love too big to survive its own gravity. "You still blame me?" he asked. She didn't flinch. "I forgave you a long time ago. But you didn't forget." She finally looked at him then, and her eyes, ancient and unflinching, said everything. "No. I remembered every version of you, even the ones you couldn't stand to be." The silence between them wasn't empty. It was holy. And when she rested her head against his shoulder, just for a moment, it wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't surrender. It was recognition. The kind that burns slowly. The kind you carry. The kind that rewrites everything it touches. Outside, someone started a drum circle. Inside, something sacred began to hum. And the ficus, finally, exhaled. They loaded into the van. The Coexist stickers on the back peeled in the sun, and the brake pads screamed like tortured banshees as they pulled out of the makeshift gravel lot. Destination, bagels and noodles. The only place in Gainesville where you could get a bacon, egg, and cheese on a sesame bagel and drunken noodles with extra Thai chili at 9 a.m. on a Thursday. Several members of the house crew were already there when they arrived, barefoot, hungover, ordering hibiscus lemonade with tears in their eyes. Happy and Sarrah took a booth by the window. "So," said someone walking past, "you two a thing again?" Sarrah smirked. "Define thing." "You look like you're married, but also like you just tried to kill each other last night." "Close," Happy said, "but with more machetes." The drive back to Citra was long and hot, a slow bleed through oak tunnels and sleepy roads where time didn't matter. Happy didn't say much. His thoughts ran loops. "Don't do this. You've done this. It never ends well. She's beautiful. She'll burn your world down. But maybe that's what you want. Maybe you want someone who sees all of it, the sin, the madness, the war, and still brings you tea and a joint the morning after." Next to him, Sarrah reclined in the seat, one bare foot up on the dash, playing with a machete she'd found in the back with the loving care of someone stroking a pet snake. She wasn't even watching him. She was just being, dangerous and divine. He glanced over, caught a glint in her eye. "Careful," he muttered. "You'll start flirting, and I'll start remembering why I exiled myself in the first place." She smiled, not at him, just to herself. "I already am flirting," she said. "You just haven't figured out what with yet." He sighed. "God's help me." She tapped the machete against her thigh. "You had your shot at salvation. Now you're riding with the devil, you know." The van rattled down the 2-lane back roads of Alachua County, brakes screaming like banshees every time Happy tapped the pedal. Sunlight spilled through the moss-hung oaks, strobing across the cracked windshield, lighting Sarrah in flashes like some divine stop-motion reel. The old tape deck, miraculously still working, crackled to life. Static, then music, a slow pulse of bass, a voice soft as dream silk. "I lie awake. I've gone to ground." Happy groaned, half a laugh bubbling out. "Oh, hell. 07? That's a deep cut. Who left this in here? One of the Gainesville ferries?" Sarrah leaned back in the passenger seat, one bare foot on the dash, twirling his machete lazily like it was a baton. Her smile was a knife wrapped in velvet. "Don't pretend you don't love it. I remember you humming this once, right before we broke into that temple on the astral coast." "Yeah," he muttered, eyes on the road. "That raid ended with me getting stabbed through the lung." She grinned wider. "Worth it, though, wasn't it?" The song rolled on, smoky and slow. "Destiny, destiny, protect me from the world." Happy's throat tightened. He didn't look at her, didn't dare, but the words scraped against places in him he'd buried. "Funny," he said after a beat, voice dry. "That track always makes me think of—" He cut himself off. "Of me?" she asked, tilting her head, daring him. He risked a glance. She was watching him with that look, the one that said she already knew the answer, but wanted to watch him squirm. He snorted. "Of bad decisions that smell like jasmine oil and cigarettes." She laughed, low and dangerous, tapping the machete against her thigh in rhythm with the music. "Then you haven't learned a damn thing." "Because I'm still sitting here." The van rumbled through the pines, creaking and wheezing, smelling like old incense and sweat and possibly judgment. Back to Citra, back to the shack, the sunflowers, the guns, and a story that was far, far from over. Golden chains. The hoe slammed into the dirt with a dull thud, again and again and again. Happy had been at it for an hour now, shirtless, barefoot, sweating in the kind of damp Florida heat that made you question whether God had gone senile or just sadistic. The garden rows were ragged, uneven, and getting angrier by the minute, which suited his mood just fine. It wasn't the weeds he was trying to kill. It was the thoughts. Thoughts that smelled like jasmine and sandalwood and whatever else Laura decided to waft around when she wasn't wearing pants, or anything at all. He gritted his teeth and slammed the hoe again. Off behind the trellis, the outdoor shower hissed to life. Again. 5th time today, he thought. That woman's going to drain the aquifer. And sure enough, there she was, laughing under the stream, black hair plastered down her back like liquid ink over parchment. Steam rolled off her bronze skin as she rubbed lavender soap over every cruel curve she'd ever weaponized. Sometimes she wore a bikini top. Sometimes she wore nothing. Today she had on one of his old flannel shirts, unbuttoned and soaked, hanging off her like a dare. "This body I got this time?" she called out, not even looking at him. 10 out of 10. These tits are excellent. Happy choked on a breath and slammed the hoe down hard enough to splinter the handle. He didn't respond. Couldn't. If he looked at her too long, it was over. That's how she worked. She'd draw him in like a black hole in lipstick, and the next thing you knew, you were naked, exhausted, spiritually compromised, and 3 chakras short of self-respect. It wasn't that she was just beautiful. It was that she knew him, knew how to unmake him, knew the songs he used to sing in God battles, the wounds he'd never healed, the dreams he'd sworn never to speak of again. She was carved out of the same nightmare silk as he was, and that was the problem. He wasn't afraid of women. He was afraid of her. And worse, he wanted her. Not the body, though damn, that didn't help, but her. The way she moved through worlds like they owed her. The way she never apologized. The way she whispered things in dead languages that only he remembered. So he hoed the earth like it had called his mother a whore, because that was the only way to keep from marching straight over to that shower and losing the last scrap of his exile-earned restraint. The hoe hit something hard. Metal? Happy blinked. The world shimmered. He dropped to one knee, brushing soil away with shaking fingers. A glint of gold beneath the dirt. Number. Not gold. Not really. Something like gold. The kind that didn't belong in Florida. His breath caught, and just like that, the air thickened. Vision doubled. The garden faded. The sunlight turned strange. Too bright, too perfect. His skin tingled. He felt himself fall, not in space, but between. The cursed city of gold. The hoe hit something hard. At first, Happy thought it might just be another rock or some old buried beer can left by the previous tenants. Hippies, degenerates, or both. But when he bent down and brushed the dirt aside with a calloused hand, he saw the edge of something that